Welcome back to the Go Bros YouTube channel. Today we're working on this 2015 Chevy Equinox. It has a blown out rear main seal, as you can see in this video. We're going to get the engine pulled out, replace that rear main seal, replace the intake manifold with the PCV valve, put the engine back in, and get this thing back on the road. Let's get started. All right, we're going to get this sucker jacked up. This is an all-wheel drive car, but we have to take the transfer case out. So make sure you put wheel chocks under there, because there's going to be a lot of work underneath. You're going to want to get this as high as you can. The more room you got underneath, the easier it's going to be to work under there, and you have quite a bit of stuff to undo. Alright, first things first, get your ECM unhooked and take your battery out. There is two 5/16 hose clamps holding on the intake, as well as one hose that goes in the left side that just pulls out. You're going to want to just take some time and get all the electrical connectors unhooked and try to get that wiring harness swinged up out of the way. There's two 10mm bolts and one 10mm nut holding that high pressure fuel pump bracket and foam on. Then two 10mm bolts holding the actual high pressure fuel pump in the engine. I just leave all that connected and swing it up out of the way. Unbolt all the 13mm bolts holding the intake manifold on. There also is a 10mm bolt on the dipstick. Undo that and your intake should pull right out. You're going to have to also take your air box out to get to the motor mount. Make sure you stuff a couple rags in the intake manifold just to make sure you don't get any dirt or anything falls inside. Unplug all your coil packs and connectors on the back side of the engine, and there also is a couple connectors that go down to your electric power steering pump. Disconnect all those and that wiring harness should be able to swing up out of the way. Got all the coil packs unhooked. There's a couple wires that go down to your electric power steering pump and the main connector here. Unhook all those and your wiring harness can get pushed off to the side. This should be all open back here. Take apart the transfer case and this motor mount right here. Nothing too crazy here, just remove your tire and remove the two bolts on the lower mount of the strut. Those are splined, so make sure you put a nut on the other side and tap those out. I also had to remove a bracket for the brake line and a wheel speed sensor to get enough room to wiggle the CV axle out. There's three bolts on the side of your transfer case that are attached to the back of the engine. Those have to come out before separating your engine and transfer case. All right, kind of an update. It's really hard to video back here. This motor mount is mounted right about there. There's one bolt here. There's a couple bolts on the side there you gotta take off to get that out of the way. And then you got two bolts, one there, one there. I found it's best to use an impact with a couple extensions with a swivel head to get the torque converter bolts out, three of them, and they do use Loctite, so they're a little bit tricky to get out. Okay, at this point, with all your engine to transmission bolts taken out and all your motor mounts taken off, you can start lifting the engine out. Just do this real slow, a little bit at a time to see if you missed anything. I always forget you gotta take the hood off in order to get the clearance to lift over the front bumper. So you see me here remembering and popping the hood off real quick. You can clearly see the oil leaking out right there. Nice and dry above it, all wet below it. It's nice and tight around the crankshaft there, and right up here, it's pushed out all the way around here, and then gets pushed back in right there. So this is normally caused from too much crankcase pressure, and it just pushes out this rear main seal. And your PCV valve is in your intake, and there's not really a good way to clean it properly, so you just go ahead and replace the intake manifold. Okay, you want to be extremely careful getting this rear main seal out. You see me using a screwdriver with a hammer, and I'm only tapping on the seal, not the seal surface, because the last thing you want to do is scratch that surface, and you're going to be back here with another rear main seal leak. Clean that surface up a little bit, make sure you don't have any burrs or anything that's going to tear that seal. I put a little film of oil on that and just slowly tap it into place. Okay, at this point, we are on to reassembly. Make sure you put thread locker on your flywheel bolts. Torque that down to your specific year. They are a little bit different as the years go on. As you're putting the engine in, make sure your torque converter is sitting as far as it needs to inside the transmission, else you're gonna have issues getting this thing to line up. It should slide in pretty easy. The last thing you wanna do is force it into place. Just another side note, when you're putting the engine to transmission bolt right underneath the thermostat, it's hard to see back there, but it's right there. There is a ground. It's the only one that is an actual stud, and that ground has to go on there, and then there's a nut that holds that ground on. I do apologize that there's not very good video of behind the engine. It's really hard to get a video as well as have your head and both your arms in there. But as you see here, I'm just putting the motor mount back in. When you're putting your torque converter bolts back in, make sure you use Loctite, as well as go around and get all three of them snugged up before you start torquing them down. Alright, we got the manifold put back in there. Got to put some anti-seize on the bolts and tighten them nuts down. Got the heater core lines hooked back up. Under here, hard to see. Right there, got the two lines hooked up to the thermostat. That one goes to the coolant reservoir tank. And then this big hose right there, it goes to the lower part of the radiator. Those are kind of a pain to get hooked up. Get that manifold bolted back up, and then we can swing our wiring harness back down and start plugging everything back in the back. We do also have that heat shield to throw on there first. This part is kind of plug and play. Just lay that harness over top and plug stuff in where you unplugged it from. So when I take the alternator and AC condenser apart, your AC condenser has to be unbolted to get your alternator out. If you don't do this, then you try to take your alternator off and it hits the AC lines. So you just got to do this in reverse. Your alternator has to go on first, and then you can put your AC condenser back on. Put everything on your passenger side back together as you've seen us take it apart. We got our brand new intake manifold with some fresh gaskets that we're putting in right now. Pretty simple here. Put that in and tighten up all your bolts, and then start swinging over your electrical connectors to plug everything in there. You also have that 10mm bolt holding on the dipstick to the side of the intake. Your high pressure fuel pump should slide back in fairly easily and have those two 10mm bolts, as well as the foam cover and the metal guard that has two 10mm bolts and one nut to tighten up. Alright, at this point we are on the home stretch. Get your intake plenum hooked back up and your mass airflow sensor, and then fill the system with coolant. Shine around a little bit, make sure you don't have any coolant leaks or anything you're not expecting. All right, the car fired right up. I'm bleeding the coolant system right now. We got no leaks, and always good to check that you have no crankcase pressure, no hissing sounds or a suction coming from your oil cap. So that means our new intake manifold and our PCV valve is working properly. That's what caused the rear main seal leak in the first place. So we want to make sure that's good before we run it too long. I did lose a little bit of transmission fluid out the transfer case. So I have the transmission fill plug removed. That is, I got the fill plug removed, as you can see there. That's on the driver's side of the transmission. You want to let that get up to temperature before you start filling it, but your fill plug for the transmission is right there. So you fill it up until it comes out of that hole. Once it starts coming out of that hole, you know the level is good. Put the plug back in, and we should be able to take this thing on its first test drive. All right, you can't really see here, but I'm just pouring transmission fluid in there real slow, and then right there, it starts to drip out. So that means as long as your transmission is up to temperature and your fluid isn't cold, you can put that bolt in and tighten it up, and your level should be good. All right, the Equinox is all done and ready to get back on the road with no leaks this time. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed, and we'll see you in the next one.